on National Canadian Film Day, this is free. We're going to support this, and all of our sponsors and broadcasting streaming partners are all going to be on board doing this for free. We're going to do it around the world and all across the country, and you just need to tune in.
It is an absolute pleasure to speak with you, Colm. It really, truly is. I love your work, and I've seen not only on stage on screen, but on stage as well. I've
Oh,
had the
wow.
chance to see you in Stratford more than once, and it's really
Cool.
a pleasure.
Well, thanks, man.
Let's get right into Canada Film Day. I know that my understanding is you're on the board.
Yep. Have been for
Um,
about 10 years.
so have you been around since the beginning? Because I think this is
No,
just
not because Real Canada is coming on 20 years. I've been on the board for about 10. So what seems like a while. Adam McGoyan is the original founding member.
okay,
But
right.
I've been here for a while, and willing to do whatever it is we can to get the message across and get it out there. And the zenith of this was at Rideau Hall a few weeks ago. We went in and showed a couple of movies to the Governor General, and everybody there and Her Excellency seemed to have had a good time. So
I think it's such a special project, and it's something that really, I think it's good for the Canadian film industry to have its day in the sun, if you will. Uh,
yeah.
what is it that excites you about Canada Film Day in general?
Well, I mean, it is, as you say, one particular day that we can get enough word out there that we put the focus on Canadian film, which otherwise, for reasons of economics, often gets slipped by because, our American cousins are making huge, big things and they're splashy and they can afford, more in the lunch budget than we can afford to make entire films. And so it needs a little extra attention, a little focus. And so we can say to people, look, on National Canadian Film Day, this is free. We're going to support this, and all of our sponsors and broadcasting streaming partners are all going to be on board doing this for free. We're going to do it around the world and all across the country, and you just need to tune in a library, in old folks' homes, in a Legion Hall, or in the theaters and online and on TV. We get to focus on Canadian stories done mainly by Canadians. And I just think that's an extraordinary opportunity to say, look, well, let's just raise the flag and wave it for a little bit on this day. Say, look, in case you didn't realize we were making amazing movies, let's just help you with that. And then, obviously you look down south, you say, well, who are the funniest people there? It turns out they're Canadians. Who are some of the most talented people down there? Writers, directors, actors. Turns out a lot of them are Canadians. And so it just suddenly, I think, gives us a whiff of certain pride and then interest. And so that renewed interest gets people going, oh, wait a minute. Canadian movies are not a problem. This is not some tax subsidized navel gazing nonsense. This is really useful. And I like being a part of that.
It's interesting. You talk about this about the people in Hollywood and in the US that are, so many of them have come from Canada. And I know maybe it was about 7 or 8 years ago, but there was this sort of conversation beginning to take place about what makes a Canadian film. And, is it a Canadian because, Ryan Reynolds is in it, or is it a Canadian film because it's made here? There's all sorts of discussions. What in your mind makes something Canadian?
Well, I think it would be helpful if they reflected our stories. Usually, director, writers, the visionaries behind these things who are willing to make these movies for pennies, because you have to, um, are coming from their own experience. They're writing what they know, right? And that will, by extension, be in its specificity universal to hopefully the world, but very particularly to Canadians. I'll tell you a story. I probably shouldn't. But years ago, I did a film called Beautiful Dreamers for John Kent Harrison. And it was about a true moment in history when Richard Morris Buck met with the great poet Walt Whitman and brought him up to his asylum in London, Ontario, to, look around and sniff out how patients, were handled. And he came with a compassionate and poetic understanding of how maybe to approach this. And Buck, who had written a book called Cosmic Consciousness, obviously they had a lot to chat about. So this movie, starring me, a bunch of Canadians, Sheila McCarthy, Tom McCamus, and Tom is particular in this story. He was playing one of the asylum dwellers who was dragooned into playing a kind of gentleman's game of cricket. And so the staff were going to play the inmates of the asylum. And in a gentle cricket game on a sunny day somewhere, wherever we were, I think shooting in Toronto, pretending to be London. And in the end, the climax, Colin Fox hit the cricket ball, staff member, and out went Tom McCamus, really like this. And I'm not kidding you. The, you know, now he caught the ball. He
Okay.
caught the ball. There was great emotional well of good faith, heartbreaking, just beautiful stuff. And I said to John, I said, John, I don't know about this. I said, what if he dropped the ball? He said, Colm, if he drops the ball, it's a Canadian movie. So, I went, okay, note taken. We're looking for international sales. We're telling a different story here. But there is something about that. Sometimes it's we can drop the ball and it's still funny. Or it's still heartbreaking, you know? And I remember recently, I think it was last National Canadian Film Day, I was hosting John and the Missus at a screening with Mary Walsh because we had just lost Gordy Pinson, alas,
Yeah.
and wanted to celebrate him. And you look at that film and it's very specific. It's very particular to its place, but it's remarkable. And the performers in it are remarkable. Everything about it is that it even got made is remarkable. And that we can do it so effectively, efficiently, and inexpensively. And yet the story's once done, you can't tell that that's $100 million movie and that's a $20 million movie and that's a $2 million movie if it's a good movie, right?
Yeah.
And so that has encouraged me to be a champion of any young artist who wants to do their story. So, Ali and I were just talking a minute ago about the last time we worked together. We did a movie called Sugar Daddy, which was Kelly McCormick's film. She wrote, she starred, she had a female cinematographer, a female director, female designers, da da da. And obviously they needed a bad guy. I went, I'm here. I could do that. But one does these things. Megan follows is suddenly going to direct. I said, I will be there for you for $165 somewhere in Hamilton, wherever you need me. Why? Because that gets this work done. That gets those stories out there. And once they're out there, the cost is immaterial, right? And so we have a variety of programs. I don't mean to ramble away from National Canadian Film Day, but we have a variety of programs. The film festival element that goes into the schools and the kids pick the movies they'd like to see. The Welcome to Canada program, our Indigenous program, our How to Find a Career in the Film Industry program, and National Canadian Film Day. And so they all kind of dovetail together. But as you very wisely point out, NCFD is our moment to say, let's just shine a light on this nationally and see if we can't get government at every level and all the cultural institutions and broadcasters and streamers to play along, and with a lot of very generous sponsors. And mercifully, they have.
And one of the things too, in light of this, growing up, when I was growing up, I think Canadian film, forgive me, got a bad rep.
Yeah,
You know,
no, no.
it wasn't the big shiny blockbusters. There was more of these personal films like you talk about. But we've seen a real boom in the industry in the last 10 years, I would say. I'm sure Canada Film Day helps that as well. But we've really seen young filmmakers as well
Mhm.
really get the chance to tell their stories. And I think it's really, really helped people understand how wonderful Canadian films can truly be.
Well, we have such remarkable talents. Caitlin Cronenberg's first film is coming out, Humane. I know her as a photographer from doing publicity shoots for Umbrella Academy, and she's been just brilliant. I do have a small part in Humane. Not really. You can't see my head. She just asked me to do a voice thing, and I'm delighted to be asked. But Melissa D'Agostino is a partner to one of the Campagna brothers, and together they make films for Gossamer. I don't know how they manage it against green screens. They were doing it during the pandemic. They put solo actors. They say to me, "Can you come and just you'll be by yourself. You'll be safe. You'll be distanced, and we'll put in the world later." And they're grinding these movies out. They've got an economic model. It works, and they're popular.
Yeah.
So how do you explain this? I mean, I like to think that the idea of personal stories is not a bad way of finding your niche in the market. You know, Adam McGoyan and I were in the car ride on the way in from the airport to Rideau Hall, and he was talking about, his films and the difficulties of making them, but that everybody recognizes that they are a niche market item when he goes to make them, so that, he's not promising anybody Barbie and Oppenheimer kind of money as a return.
Yeah.
But he's saying, if you believe in the story, if you believe in the art of it, and these remarkable people who are coming on as collaborators who clearly do believe in it, then you might be part of something really special. I mean, in the list of people who are being celebrated this year, some in memoriam, alas, Don Shabib, Norman Jewison, Charles Officer, horrible loss so soon. And then, Mina Shum's Double Happiness is at 30 years. Adam's movies at 25 years. Bruce McDonald's movie is at, I think, 30 years. You know, oh my goodness. And these are movies that have had impact around the world and have, I think, encouraged other people to think, hey, listen, Canada's making movies of their own stories. We can do that. And obviously, you know, it's it is very much like pulling teeth. It's hard to get the money, it's hard to get the backing, it's hard to get people interested. But once you do, and they're on board, it works. I mean, we did Bone Cop, Bad Cop, and it remains one of the most successful movies in Canadian history, and it made money here. And all of my people are in LA. So my agents and manager, when is it coming to America? I said, it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to. It made more money than it cost to make right here. So we're done. We weren't done. We made another one, and now we're hopefully, knock wood, we're going to make a television series of it in July. But the bottom line is that economic model seemed to work. The story worked. People were amused by it. It was very particularly Canadian, and it wouldn't have been made anywhere else. And so I think there's a part of us that really relishes our stories. I was on a plane. I'm going back and forth to Texas these days. And I'm on a plane and coming back home to go and do the Rideau Hall thing. And I can see the screens of the first, the next six passengers ahead of me. And three out of six were watching a Canadian film, some of them in French. And I thought, that's really cool. That is a straw poll I could never have asked to take on a plane at 35,000 feet. But here they are watching Kim Tui's story, Rue, and wow, I think this is cool and worth celebrating. And the reason I'm part of the board is that Jack Bloom and Sharon Corder laughingly thought I would be of some help because, I'd go around and wave the flag for them. And I'm only too happy to do it.
I really appreciate you saying that because again, I think the marker of success for us is to
Yeah.
celebrate all the greatness that's going on. I,
And just how good these people are. I
yes,
mean,
absolutely.
and obviously we are impressed by international recognition. If you sell hot dogs on the streets of New York, you come back and you're a hero. And that's a little disappointing, but if that works, then it works. But it cannot be denied that many of our most successful filmmakers, I mean, who did Dune?
Yeah,
Denis Villeneuve. Uh, I rest my handbag, right? And so we've got a lot of street cred in comedy, drama, action, you name it. And because of our particular perspective on our great American neighbors, we can offer different takes on things. And so we come back to tell our own stories, not even worried about how they're going to cross any borders at all. We
yeah.
don't care. We've got plenty of people to talk to here, as long as we don't spend too much money.
Yes. One of the things I thought was interesting this year, looking at Canada Film Day, the theme is films that AI could never make.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that because it certainly sounds, just in our conversation here, there is something unique about the Canadian voice in telling a story. So is there a limitation there to that we're making ourselves aware of, trying to point to the souls of the artists?
Well, I certainly hope that we, can continue counting on artists to generate these brilliant stories and ideas. If you fed all of Canadian film into a chat GPT and said, make me the next great Canadian film, I'm sure it would be catastrophic. But I'm encouraged by the very fact that as we're talking about this, we don't tend to make formula films. You could make a Marvel movie with a computer. You could certainly get a first draft, right? And then have professional, real people polish it. But that's never the case here. We're not even commercially incentivized to make work in that way. And I am certain that if you came to all the funding bodies and independent funding bodies, people who are interested in supporting Canadian film and said, my computer just spat this out. I think we should really make it. We could make a killing here. I don't think anybody's in it for that. They're
Mm,
in it for I believe this tells something of my story, or this is a story I believe needs telling. And so I want to be there to support it. And I will back that up with actual hard cash. And because we're so good at this stuff, I mean, one of the hidden elements of why Canadian filmmakers tend to be so good is we work so often on American films.
mm,
Big, huge American television shows, Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, and beyond. And so our crews and our actors have an enormous amount of experience, costume, AD departments. We're really, really good at this stuff. And let's face it, some of our work on those shows subsidizes our willingness to work for nothing on our own stories. And I certainly think like that, and I know a lot of my colleagues think like that, and that we would not be the least bit interested in signing up to something made by a machine. I recently came off strike from my Screen Actors Guild strike and was aghast to find that the language in the new contracts says things like, this part must be played by a human being in
mm,
a story written by a human being. This is the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild coming together on language that would have been unthinkable 2, 3, 4 years ago. And here we are. So I think we're in a unique position that we want to know it's the real deal. We want to be really telling our stories. One of the takeaways from the Rideau Hall screenings was they were all immigrant stories, and we'd invited two rooms full of immigrants, Francophone and Anglophone, to witness Kim Tui's story, Rue,
mm.
and another Piece by Chocolate, the brilliant Syrian family coming to the East Coast and starting a chocolate when they really wanted to be a doctor and should have been a doctor, but now they run the most successful chocolate factories around. And so in the discussions afterwards, what was most surprising and heartbreaking as we asked each of these people, where are you from? How long have you been in Canada? And everything, we went 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, 6 months, 2 months, 2 weeks. I got here yesterday. And so various people were standing at all of these different junctures. And what they all said to a person was, this is my story. Well, now Kim's story is about Vietnamese boat people and coming to Montreal. So it clearly isn't their story. But the challenge, the struggle, the survival, and the establishing themselves in this new country was, in fact, exactly their story. And they were from Africa, they were from China, they were from South America. And it was thrilling to see that happen and to see how the filmmakers had managed to succeed by telling this one very specific story, either about chocolate or escaping Vietnam, that resonated so viscerally with these new Canadians. I mean, it was undeniable. I think the Governor General and certainly Whit Fraser, His Excellency, her husband, was very moved and taken by it, and was suggesting was we should do this more often. This is working. We could do this across the country. And so National Canadian Film Day is essentially our effort to do this at a grassroots level across the country on one single day.
It, Colm, we are out of time, but I am loving this. I
I'm
appreciate
so
the
sorry. You asked me my name and it just, what happened for
no,
an hour and a half?
this is amazing. I really appreciate the chance to chat with you. This is an honor, and I really do hope that people maximize the opportunity to participate in Canada Film Day. I really hope so because there's some great films that are available. We'll have the links on our site when
Oh,
this is
great.
placed.
Thanks.
Make sure we have that. We want to get the word out. But it is such a special day, and it's so special to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And listen, thank you so much for being part of it. It's a great pleasure talking with you.
Honestly, that means so much. Thank you. Have a great day.